And so in the box, as you can see, you'll have all of the following components. You'll start off first of all with the world map, which has divided into 6 sectors, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You'll also be getting a variety of cards and poker chips, such as our spy chips that you have here, our reserve tokens, which are here, our intel points, which are over here, which is basically the lifeblood of this game. You'll also be receiving 6 spy folders. This is where you make all your notes in. And you'll have 3 various decks, which we'll be talking about in just a moment. So, how do we set up? First of all, you set up the world map like so. And then you'll grab the green deck, also known as the operative deck, or for some people might just be called the symbol deck. What is in here? Our operatives, as it were, are a variety of different symbols, such as question marks, diamonds, X's, squares, hearts, even down to good old hashtag, exclamation marks, and so on. There'll be 13 of them. And in the 13, you'll notice that one of them is duplicated. This is sort of our double agent. You'll have 2 question marks, one in reverse, so you can at least tell the difference. Once you grab all 13, you give them a shuffle, and then place them on the line, as we like to call it, and put them face down, like so. This is going to be the first code you, as an agent, are going to decipher. The rest of the cards, you keep one of them on the side. So place that on the side there. This will be useful later on down the line. And then the rest of them are handed out to all players. So if there is only 2 of you playing, then 3 of these operative cards go to you, and they are secret, means you can look at them and make notes of them already. If you are 3 players, you can give 2 each. If you are 4 or 5 players, you give 1 to each player, and then anything that's remaining, you announce they are going to be out of the game and remove them. If you're 6 players, pretty obviously, you give 1 to each player. This is your own secret operative that you have for yourself, and will be playing a vital part in one of the actions you'll do later. So in here is where we have our rewards. And as you do, as you start guessing the codes, you'll start getting points. This is what the intels are for. So in regions 1, 2, and 3, you just put a sole 1 on them. In regions 4 and 5, you put 2 in them. And lastly, on region 6, you put 3 in them. Every player will also get a spy folder so they can start making notes, and will also be receiving 2 reserve tokens, which I'll keep in front of me right now. On top of that, they'll also be getting a set of spy chips, and pick your favorite color. So I'm going to pick one over here, and I'm going to give my opponent red for now. After which you then have a starting hand. You'll get the blue deck, or known as a starter deck, and you'll be then receiving a 1, a 2, and a 3. So you'll be receiving a 1, a 2, and a 3. All players will receive this as their starting hand. Oh, I almost forgot. You also have 7 spy cards, each one with their own ability, which we'll be covering a little later on in the video. Grab all of them, and grab the red deck, which is called the currency deck. You'll shuffle them and put the agent cards shuffled into the top half of the currency deck and put it back on top. How do you start the game? You ask around the table and say who was the last person to have watched a spy movie. Now, it might not be James Bond, but there's a lot of films out there that at least have some level of spy. Maybe it's a thriller, maybe it's an action movie, maybe it's even a horror film, as long as it's got some level of espionage or got some kind of shady organization. So technically then, the Fast and the Furious movies count. And then, we can begin. Once you figure out who the first player is, the game can begin. Each time you will grab 1 card from the currency deck and put it into your hand. Now, this will then basically lead to a series of actions that you can perform. You'll be using this by using your currency cards, so from your points, to fulfill the actions of a similar value. So there are action points that are only worth 1, some which are 2, 3, 4, and even a cheeky 5. You have to pay them, however, separately. As long as you can afford it, you can do as many actions as you like, but you have to pay them separately. So you can't have an accumulative total. You can't go and say, I'm going to pay 5 to do a 3 and a 2. You have to pay the 2 first, and then pay the 3 after that. So what are the actions? Well, let's start with every single one from the beginning. For absolutely free, you can put a spy chip onto a card. Now, what does that mean? Well, it kind of tells everyone that you know what that card is once you figure things out. Or it might just be a tactic to put some people off their game. So let's put a few on there for reference. You can also then pay 1 to look at an unreserved card. Now, an unreserved card is one that doesn't have a reserve token on it. All of these at the moment do not have a reserve token, so I can look at one of them and then put it back face down there. You can then make a note in your spy folder just for you. For 1 point as well, you can move your own spy chip. You might have placed it somewhere you might not want it anymore, so you can move it and place it however you like. For 1 point as well, you can reserve a card. So you grab one of your tokens and put it on any of the clocks of the region you want to reserve it for. So I want to reserve region number 4. This basically means that the card can no longer be swapped or moved around. It also means it's going to cost a little more to look underneath, for the fact that for 2 points, you can now look at that reserved card. It costs more to look under it. So you can go in and have a look and then put it into your notes. And also for 2 points, you can also reserve a card for 2 rounds. That basically means that not only once, but twice around the table, that card cannot be messed with. Looking at the 3 pointers now, you have a very, very powerfully cheeky move, which allows you to look at 2 cards and swap their positions. So I'm going to look at cards 2 and 6, for example. So I'm going to look at both of these and then swap their positions like so. Now, if there is a poker chip on it, if there is a spy chip on that card, that moves with it. Just so therefore people can keep track. This game might be sneaky, but it's not mean. Now, paying a 4 means you can perform a mission run. A mission run is where you actually start guessing the symbols 1 by 1, going from region 1 to region 6. We'll get into that in a moment. And for the highest value of 5, you can use your secret operative card that you have and swap it with one on the line. So, for example, I'm going to swap it with number 2. So now other people in the line are now aware that number 2 is completely different and has been completely swapped out. Only I, for example, now know what that symbol is, and everyone else needs to guess it. If there was a poker chip on there, it returns to its player. This can only happen to an unreserved card. Like I said, a reserved card cannot be moved or shuffled. Now, at some point, you might realize you might not want to do any move right now. You might want to just hoard and reserve your cards. So if that's the case, then you can always not do a move at all, including putting a poker chip down and picking up another card. However, you only have a hand size of 6. So if it goes over 6 cards in any time, you're going to have to perform an action. And so after spending time trying to figure out all the symbols are and learning about everything, you finally decide to perform a mission run. And so this is where you start guessing the cards one by one until you reach the end. So once a mission run starts, it cannot be stopped. Well, not by convenient means. So you start off with region number 1. And you say out loud what symbol that is to everyone. So in this case, it is the question mark. You flip it over. If it's correct, the player gets the intel points. You then immediately move on to the next one. Now, when you think of the next one, you have to start thinking whether or not you know that one or not. If I get it wrong, so for example, I say it's a cross, but unfortunately it was the club. This basically means that the reward does not move and change hands, and immediately moves on to the next player who now has to guess the next card. Now, after you've guessed one correctly, you can technically pass if you wanted to. When you pass to the next player, the player then now has to guess the next one, and it keeps going like that until we reach the end, where we will reset. Now this is where it leads to my favorite mechanic, the actual negotiation. So, there is a spy chip on here that isn't mine. I was yellow, my opponent is red. So, if it gets to the point where we're here, and I do not actually know what that card is, I can negotiate with anyone who's put a poker chip down. So, in this case, the opposite player has it, I can make a deal with them. So, the deal could be me providing that precious little point over to them, for example. Or it might be, how much value do you have in your hand? For example, give me half your cards. Maybe the idea is, I'll tell you that one for free, but if you guess that one correctly, I want that reward. Or it might be a bigger favor down the line. As long as you are all in agreement to what the terms are, you can negotiate however you feel like. Once you agree to it, and you give yourself a proper handshake, you have to give the reward first. So you have to give the reward to your opponent first, and then they share the information. This basically allows them to either show off their true colors. Are they trustworthy and going to tell me the truth, or are they going to lie? They now have the rewards, so they don't have any obligation to you. They've got what they wanted, but are they a trustworthy person enough to you to strike a deal? And so, they might be telling the truth, and they might reveal that this was the diamond, and I said it was a diamond, and yes, I've given them the point, and now they seem as a trustworthy person. But what if they told me something else and I agreed to it? Then by that point, it would be wrong, and that means moves immediately over to the next player, who has to then guess the next card. So once you reach the end of a mission run, where everyone has predominantly either gone through or have guessed any of the symbols and so on, whether they had them correct or not, this is the first run that has been complete. To reset, you will then grab all of the symbols again that are on the table, but also the secret 7th symbol that was there. These get shuffled in. So you now shuffle these again, like so. And then with that, place them face down again on the line. Restarting the mission again, which means then you have to now find the symbols once again, and then perform a mission run when you're ready. The good thing is you probably at this point have already sussed out what at least 6 of those 7 symbols are, unless someone has kept swapping them out with their own operatives, which some players have done. When you replenish, you also have to replenish their rewards. You notice already that there's been a few, unfortunately because they did not guess it right that time, have not moved up. But you still need to replenish it with the same amount every time. So you put 1 on each of 1, 2, and 3, adding to the reward that was left over. So in other words then, it creates an unusually interesting dynamic where after several runs and after several mission runs, sometimes depending on how lucky you have been, the rewards can be different. So now, in our little run through this time round, Region 1's 1, but 2, 3, 4, and 5 are now worth 2, while Region 6 is now worth a very hefty 6 intel points. These are your agent cards, and they have some very powerful abilities. And so, let's go through each of them. First of all, we have our Agent Zeros. Agent Zeros can stop a mission run, whether before it starts or even halfway through. So, at any time, if you have an Agent Zero and someone's going to perform a mission run, you could activate this by launching it out and saying no. You literally have stopped them from starting a mission run and moves immediately to the next player. If it's halfway through a run, what that does is immediately stops that person from guessing that card and moves it to the next player for them to guess. You then have Agent 4. Agent 4 is one of my personal favorites. It's a little bit of a bribery. So what it does is, if you're on a mission run at some point and you're stuck on a card, such as Region 3, you can play an Agent 4 and immediately skip it onto the next region. The card's not flipped and the reward is never taken. You've just decided to skip one in order to avoid any negotiations, or just simply because you don't know it, and you move it immediately over to the next card. You then have Agent 5. Agent 5 basically allows to cancel any secret agent card being played. So any of the agents, so if anyone decides to play one of them, anyone with an Agent 5 can throw it down and immediately cancels it. What's good about it though, is that card that has been played gets shuffled back into the currency deck. So there might be another opportunity for that card to be played again. Agent 6, or the sniper of the group. They have the ability to wipe out any spy chips and any number of reserve tokens that are on the board. So if you're seeing that the line is getting a little too crowded and you have an Agent 6, you can play that and wipe the board completely clean. And then finally, Agent 7. Agent 7 allows you to do 3 basic actions for free. Which means if you plan it out properly, you might be able to figure out nearly everything on the board and then perform a mission run. He is sort of our James Bond after all. And then that's the end of the game. Once the currency deck is completely empty, or there are no more intel points to replenish a run, you now need to start counting up. Every single intel token is worth 10 points. Any cards in your hand that are of a value of 1, 2, or 3 count as 1, 2, or 3 points. But if you're holding any of our secret agent cards, they're worth 15 points. That can completely change the tide of the game. Once all the points are tallied up, the person with the highest number is the winner, as considered the top spy master of Bridge of Spies.